Yeah, with Rath Yatra and things too, it's been really off the charts. We had so many different groups here. Rath Yatra time, I think we had 5 or 6 different groups who were giving classes to at different times. And the devotees around. It's been crazy.
I don't know how you manage.
Keeps us out of trouble. Okay, so we'll go ahead. Gaura Graganya Gana Gocha Goloruharam Gauranga Gudatama Gopyada Kopa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gaura Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami Uttama Adama Kichuna Bachila Jachiya Dile Kakola Kahe Premananda Emona Gauranga Hridoya Dadiya Bola Bhaja Gauranga Kaha Gauranga Laha Gaurangera Namare Jai Jana Gauranga Bhaje Se Hoyamara Pranare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Yashaiva Padambuja Bhakti Labhya Prema Vidana Parama Pumata Tasmai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Madgavirapi Gopala Sri Kuryat Kripaya Jari Tadaiva Sambhaya Pitva Rishi Yustat Priya Janaha Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunathabda Brajabala Vapahimam Vanchakalpatarubhischa Kripa Sindhubhya cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, nice to see everybody here today. Thank you very much. It's a real blessing for me to be able to get association with dear devotees, like-minded devotees of Gaura Mahaprabhu. So today we're starting on the 4th chapter of Embankment of Separation, but it's not the original 4th chapter. This is one of 3 chapters, which, same with the last chapter also, we're adding to the book. Originally this was part of the book Last Limit of Bhakti, and it's a really amazing chapter, and it's very helpful within Embankment of Separation to understand the subject matter that our Guru Maharaj is speaking about. So we titled this chapter The Last Limit of Bhakti, and it begins by speaking about how Gaura lila is Krishna lila. And I'll go ahead and read you a little something. Maybe I can share this on the screen at the same time. Let's see. So he says in the Adi Lila, 10th chapter, Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami has given a description of the many expansions of the Chaitanya tree, the branches and the sub-branches. All these very dear intimate devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu know Gauranga Mahaprabhu and they know Krishna. It is described in the Gaura Ganadash Deepika how most of them were in Krishna Lila, Braj Lila. Most of them were Sakhi Manjaris, and some were in Sakya Ras, friendship, like this Abhiram. They've all taken part in both Krishna Lila and Gaura Lila. They are the associates of Krishna and the associates of Gaura, because there's no difference between Gaura and Krishna. Krishna is Gaura and Gaura is Krishna. So Krishna Lila is Gaura Lila and Gaura Lila is Krishna Lila. And Tattva there is the same, only one difference is there. In Gaura, the two bodies of Radha and Krishna are combined together. So I'd like to speak a little bit about this today. This is a subject that we don't often hear about. Elsewhere, many times, also in Embankment of Separation, Guru Maharaj uses a different kind of way to express this. He says that just as you have a book, and at the end of the book you've expressed everything that you want to express. Let's see, here's a book, Process of Inquiry. So we compiled this book from Guru Maharaj's talks, but after we compiled everything, we realized there were some things left that we needed to add to it. But because they're not exactly part of the book, they're called in Sanskrit a parishishta, or in English they're an appendix. So it's part of the book, it's the same subject. It's integral to the book, but at the same time it's a little bit different. So this point about Gaura Lila and Krishna Lila being one is a very, very important subject matter to understand. The purpose of Embankment of Separation, one of the purposes anyway, is that to help devotees to understand the position and importance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it's not just that he's Krishna in a very merciful form, and he came and he danced and he chanted a whole lot and he saved Jagai Madai, and that's Gaura Lila. But there's no difference between Gaura Lila and Krishna Lila. And this very, very deep point is a very multi-level point. We sing every morning in Guru Vashtakam that Saksha Durit Vinastamasta Shastra Uktastata Bhavyata Eva Sabhi, that Gurudev is none different from Krishna. And indeed here in this first paragraph of this chapter, Guru Maharaj is expressing how important it is, how Mahaprabhu has come with so many different associates. Just this morning we were giving a class to a japa group, and we gave it on the first 4 verses of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Harinam Chintamani. And they're verses which I've never heard anybody speak on. Generally, devotees just kind of overlook them. They don't really perhaps see how they're foundational to the entire Harinam Chintamani. The first verse speaks about Jagannath Puri, how it's on the bank of the ocean, how there's Daru Brahma Jagannath here, and how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes to the same place, and he's a sannyasi, but he's Bhagavan, and he's come to give Krishna Prem, and he comes with his associates, and how Mahaprabhu comes and he hears from his associates. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur elaborates on this in the purport also, in one of his footnotes, how how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard Mukti Tattva from the lips of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, how he heard Sadhya Sadhana Tattva from the mouth of Ramananda Roy, how he heard Rasa Tattva from the mouth of Rupa Goswami, and how he heard Nam Tattva from the lips of Haridas Thakur. So again, this has a Bahiranga Karan and an Antaranga Karan, or an external and internal purpose. Externally, this is how Mahaprabhu is spreading his movement through the devotees. But internally, there's a necessity also. Because now Krishna has come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Krishna, he has an ontological position. He's known as Priti Vishray. This is a topic which will come later in Embankment of Separation also. That Krishna, he's the supreme object of love. Whereas Srimati Radharani and the devotees in general, their position is Priti Ashray, or the abode of love. So just as it's not possible for the sun to know darkness, or for ice to understand fire, or vice versa, because they're opposites. So too, how is it possible for Krishna to understand the mood of a devotee? So for him to be able to understand that, he has to come as Bhakta Rup. He has to come in the mood of a devotee. And therefore, as we've commented several times, so look back a little bit at it to help us understand. This is one of the reasons why Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and basically all Gaudiya Vaishnavas forbid the devotees from putting a peacock feather on the deity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because Krishna's come in the mood of a devotee. And if we put a peacock feather or a flute in his hands, then we're telling him that he's Krishna. And then at that time he'll say, oh, that's right, I forgot. And then he'll become Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate. He'll become an ocean of mercy and very, very merciful. But he's not Mahabodhanyaya avatar. The degree of mercy that Krishna gives is not at all comparable to the degree of mercy that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives. Because Mahaprabhu is in the mood of Radharani. And we spoke something about that in our last session. So I want to focus a little bit in this session on a very, very big subject, a topic which sometimes we speak on for 5 or 6 days, 3 or 4 hours in each session. And we're just going to speak a little today about it. We're just taking a few points about how Krishna Lila is Gaura Lila and how Gaura Lila is Krishna Lila. And Guru Maharaj says in Tattva they're the same. There's only one difference, that in Gauranga Mahaprabhu and Gaura Lila, the bodies of Radha and Krishna are combined together. Now, just to make a little quick note on that, that's a bit of a controversial subject. Some of our Gaudiya Vaishnava family members, particularly the members of the Advaita Paribar, they don't appreciate it when they hear devotees saying that Radha and Krishna have become one in one body as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They protest that because they say, no, this is something impersonal. But if you examine the subject matter, then we can see something for both sides of this apparent dilemma. Because Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes it, Radha Bhava Jyoti Suvali Tam Nomi Krishna Swarupam. The Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna Swarup. But what's there, language of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he says that Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. He writes this in his introduction to Chaitanya Charitamrita, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a combined form of Radha and Krishna. But when we say that they're combined, it doesn't mean that we've taken their two bodies and we squish them into one, and somehow they're one in some impersonal sense. But Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains that Radha Bhava Dhyuti Suvalitam Nomi Krishna Swarupam, that Mahaprabhu is Krishna, but he's in the mood and he has a complexion of Srimati Radharani. So, Abhinatvanama, just as there's no difference between the name of Krishna and Krishna himself, between Nam and Nami, also there's no difference between Radha and Radha Bhav, between her Deha, her body, and her Bhav. You can't separate the two of them. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna who has adopted the mood of Radha. It doesn't mean that the two bodies have become one. It's a little confusing because, of course, there's no question of Radha and Krishna having mundane bodies. But because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna who's adopted the mood of Radha, then Radha and Krishna are combined together. So I'd like to look a little bit today, mostly from the Adi Lila chapter 12 of the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And Vrindavan Das Thakur says quite a bit there about how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna. He speaks about how Nimai was a badmash as a young boy. He was a great rascal, and he would go to different places and he would steal things. And he would sometimes go to the bank of the Ganga when the young girls were taking bath there and they were worshiping Lord Shiva to give them a proper husband. And they had placed beside the river all the different articles to worship the Lord. And Nimai would come and he would eat all the food that they put aside for Lord Shiva. He would take the sandalwood paste that they put aside and put it on himself and wear the cloth and wear the garlands and smell the flowers. And when the girls would protest, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would say, I am Krishna, I am he. And he would also do this with the Brahmins who were going there, and they were worshipping Lord Vishnu. He would take the objects of worship of Lord Vishnu and use them for himself. So he was acting like a real badmash. Badmash in Hindi and Bengali and Oriya means a rascal. So the devotees were speaking about him, and they were saying that he's a Brahmin, he has some very special potency, he must be some kind of great personality. And although he's such a rascal, and he's constantly trying to debate with us, still, we get so much satisfaction just by seeing him. And then the devotees are speaking amongst themselves, and they said, Manushera emon panija deki nahi, Krishna na bhajena shabe eduka pai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. They said, Manushera emon pandita deki nahi. We've never seen such panditya, such scholarship in any ordinary person. We only have one dukh, one pain, one suffering in our heart. Krishna na bhajena. They all said, Sabe edukapai, this is our pain. Why Nimai doesn't worship Krishna? If he would just worship Krishna, it would be so wonderful. Anyonye sabe sadena sabakati, sabe bola ihan hoka Krishna rati. So then the Vaishnavas, they were all speaking together. Shabi Boli, they all said, Ihan hoka Krishna rati. And they all, the Vaishnavas, they all prayed to each other. You please bless Nimai. This is because the Vaishnavas, they had faith. They could appreciate the power of the Vaishnavas. So they requested each other, you please bless Nimai. Ihan hoka Krishna rati, that his mind will be fixed on Krishna. He'll get Krishna rati. And they would stand on the bank of the Ganga, and they would all offer prayers to Krishna. And what were the prayers they were offering? Hena Kora Krishna Jagannatha Nandana, Tora Rashe Matahao Chari Anyamana. Oh dear Krishna, please, that Jagannatha Nandan, that son of Jagannath Misha, Tara Rashe Matahao Chari Anyaman. May he become absorbed in you, and Chari Anyaman, may he give up any other thought other than you. This is such a beautiful point. We also want this blessing from the Vaishnavas, that we can not think of anything else but Krishna. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to teach us about the glories of the Vaishnavas, he came as a rascal scholar, and the devotees were so much in love with him that they were praying for him. And they went on praying to Krishna, and they said, Niravari prema bhavi bhajuka tomare, Hena shanga Krishna deha ama shavakare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. My dear Lord, they prayed, Niravadi prema bhavi, bhajuka tomare. You please give him this Niravadi prema, this one-pointed love for you. And Hena Shanga Krishna Deha Ama Shabakar. Please let us have such association. This is the mood of the devotees. And this is partly why Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami begins Chaitanya Charitamrita by speaking about all the different branches of the Chaitanya tree. Because, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says in a famous article which we like to cite called Isosa to Sri Chaitanya, he says that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an extended subject. And if it's a desire of a devotee to worship him, then he has to worship all the aspects of him. And the devotees are part of him. You can't separate them from each other. And Krishna Das Thakur, Vrindavan Das Thakur, he says that Mahaprabhu, Nimai, understood the prayers of the devotees. Bhakta Ashirvada Prabhu Shri Kori Loy. Bhakta Ashirvada say Krishna Iti Bhakti Hoy. That Mahaprabhu, he accepted that Ashirvad, those blessings of the devotees, Shri Kori Loy, on his head. He bowed his head and accepted those blessings. Because Bhakta Ashirvada say Krishna Iti Bhakti Hoy. Krishna Bhakti is only possible by getting the blessings, the Ashirvad of the devotees. And this is such a very, very, very important part of Gaura Lila. For both internal reasons and external reasons, both Bahiranga Karan and Antaranga Karan. Externally, Mahaprabhu is teaching us, as Krishna tells Arjuna in the Adi Purana, in a verse which is also quoted by Rupa Goswami in Laghu Bhagavatamrita and by Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says that Krishna tells Arjuna in Adi Purana, Ye me bhakta jana partana me bhakta sate jarahama bhaktanam chaye bhaktas te me bhakta tamo mataha. That person who says he's my devotee, he's not my devotee. But the devotee of my devotee is my real devotee. So this is a very, very important principle for us to understand in Gaura Lila, the important role of the devotees. And how those devotees in Krishna Lila, they came again in Gaura Lila. And what is the significance of that? And we'll be building on that more and more in this book until we come to the last chapters of Embankment of Separation. And we hear about how Lalita and Vishaka came as Sarup Damodar and Roy Ramananda. And it was by their mercy, by the bhajan they were doing in the Gambhira, that Krishna, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was able to get the mercy of Radharani, was able to understand the mood of Radharani, because that's how he gets Radharani's blessings. That's how we get the blessings of a devotee, not just by washing their feet or by feeding them or giving them a donation or something. But the devotees, what is their real treasure? Their real treasure is their heart. Their real treasure is their feelings for the Lord. And when we begin to understand those feelings, as described in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, Shushu Shadadanasya, Vasudeva Kata Ruchim San Mahatsevaya Vipa Punya Tirtana Sevana, by rendering service to that devotee, as Punya Tirtha, then we get that Kata Ruchi, we get that taste, meaning we understand something of that devotee's mood toward the Lord. And that's why Raghunath Das Goswami, in the first verse of his Mukta Charit, describes that Namastration Manamapi Satchiputram Matrasvarupam. When he speaks about the gifts of Gurudev, the first thing that he mentions is Namastration, that Gurudev has given me the holy name. Now that may sound a little confusing because the holy name was there. According to our commentaries, according to the Bhagavatam itself, the holy name was being chanted in such a yuga by certain rishis in that. But the Bhagavatam describes that they didn't place so much stress on it. They didn't consider it to be such an important thing because they were more attracted by fire yagas and things. And we see like that. Sometimes some devotees also, they're more impressed by chanting Nishringa Kavacha, or doing mudras and chanting elaborate mantras and things and doing rituals. And that's okay. That's also a very beautiful thing. But those devotees, when they have that stress like that, they don't understand the value of the holy name and how the holy name is everything. So in this chapter, in this 12th chapter of the Adi Lila of Chaitanya Bhagavat, the devotees are telling Nimai, why are you wasting your time with this mundane education? And they said, Nimai, what are you going to get by studying? Just worship Krishna. And they told him, why are you studying? The purpose of studying is to get devotion to Krishna. And if you don't get that devotion to Krishna, then what's the use? Tabiki vidyaya kikore. Then what's the use of your education? Say yadi nahila. If you don't get that, If you don't get Krishna Bhakti, then what's the use of your education? It has no meaning. And Mahaprabhu Nimai, when he heard that, Kavira Vrindavan Thakur says, Hasi Boli Prabhu, that Nimai smiled. And he said, Bhara Bhagya Se Amar. He said, I'm very, very fortunate. Tomar Shikao Mori Krishna Bhakti Sar. Because you're all teaching me the essence of Bhakti. That's a very, very fortunate thing. He could have said, who do you think you are? Don't you know who I am? I'm Nimai Pandit, I'm a great Pandit. Sometimes we think, yeah, who is this person speak? I'm senior to you, I'm older than you. How can you give instructions to me? But Mahaprabhu, he saw that in one sense it was a little funny, because he's Sankirtanaika Pitaro, he's the father of the Sankirtan movement. He's that Prema Bhakti Datta, he's a person who gives Krishna praying because he's in the mood of Radha. And here the devotees are speaking to him and teaching him about Bhakti. So he smiled. But he said, Bodho Bhagya Seyamar. I'm very, very fortunate. And this is a principle that we see in many places throughout Gaura Lila. It's a principle I like to meditate on. I was thinking just a few days ago, yesterday when we were here, I went and had darshan of Lord Jagannath, and he's coming out of the Gundicha temple, and the heavy, heavy crowds and people pushing, and sometimes there'd be people going through the crowds, and they're just looking at Jagannath, and they're just chanting, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, and they just don't care about anybody else, and they just walk right into you and step on you, and sometimes you feel a little annoyed. And this principle is spoke about in Gaura Lila in several places. Once in the Jagannath Mandir, when Mahaprabhu was having darshan of Lord Jagannath, and he was standing next to the Garuda Stamba, some village lady came there. And she was so eager to see Jagannath. She started climbing on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's body, and she put her feet on Mahaprabhu's body, was climbing to see Lord Jagannath. Govinda was there with him. And Govinda is an interesting personality. Of course, he's a devotee of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And he's a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. He's a godbrother of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And but at the same time, there's a little bit of smartest sense in him, because he's always worried that the people are going to criticize Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he's always very orthodox and chastising devotees and people when they're not behaving properly, even chastising Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he chastised that woman, said, hey, what are you doing? You're committing some offense. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw that Govinda was doing that. And he said, hey, what are you doing, you uncivilized person? Can't you see? And it's such a beautiful thing. You're uncivilized because you don't appreciate the bhakti of this lady. Even though she's doing a terrible offense, she's walking on the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that old woman, when she understood, when she saw what she was doing, she became mortified. Oh my gosh, oh please forgive me. She was so bhavuk, seeing Lord Jagannath, that she couldn't even realize what she was doing, stepping on the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu became so touched. He told Govinda, he said, I wish I had the mood of this woman. I wish I had her greed. So this is the essence of bhakti. Mahaprabhu smiling, Hasi Bholi Prabhu, Bodho Bhagya Seyamar. I'm very fortunate because you're all teaching me this. And even though sometimes it seems a bit obnoxious when a younger person teaches us, instructs us, Mahaprabhu is teaching us here that even though he's Bhagavan and everybody's inferior to him, still he's smiling and accepting the blessings of the devotees. Another example we have of this is with Harishchandra. Harishchandra was a personal servant of Maharaj Prataparudra. And during the Rath Yatra festival, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had expanded himself and manifested himself in each different kirtan party. And this is one of the reasons why here in Jagannath Puri during the Rath Yatra so many devotees come to do kirtan, because they're hoping Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to come and join their party. as he did, is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Srivas Pandit, by the mercy of the Lord, could see that, and also so could Maharaj Prataparudra. Srivas Pandit was just astonished, and he was just standing there staring at the dancing of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At that time, Maharaj Prataparudra was there, and he couldn't see past Srivas Thakur. Srivas Thakur was right in his way. So Harish Chandra came and he started pushing him to get out of the way. And Srivas Thakur was so absorbed in watching Mahaprabhu dance, he couldn't even notice it at first. And then Harish Chandra kept pushing him. And Srivas just got annoyed because he's watching the Lord. And he brushed him aside, and Harish Chandra pushed a little harder. And Srivas hit him. And Harish Chandra was about to get angry, and then Maharaj Prataparudra spoke to him and said, "You are very fortunate. You've gotten the chastisement from the hand of Srivas Thakur. I wish that I was so fortunate." So in these pastimes, Mahaprabhu was teaching us the importance of the devotees, and that if we want to become a devotee, and Mahaprabhu himself, he's Bhagavan, but he wants to be a devotee, so he's accepting the teachings of the devotees. It's a very, very important principle. And Mahaprabhu told the devotees, he said that Tumi Shabha Jara Koro Subha Sanandaya Mora Chitta Hena Loy Shei Bhagavan. I really feel that anyone who's blessed by you is the most fortunate person. So you're right. I've thought about this, and honestly speaking, I'm just in Maya. I haven't been to Mangalartik in a week. I haven't been chanting my rounds. Mahaprabhu said, but I've decided, Kotodin, Padaiya Mora Chityache. I've decided that after teaching for a little while longer, then Chalimu Bhujiya Bhala, Vaishnava Kache. I'm going to go and serve a pure Vaishnava. So indirectly, he's speaking about Ishwara Puri. And then Mahaprabhu smiled at the devotees. But by the influence of Nimai, no one could recognize him. So a little later in the same chapter, it's described that Mahaprabhu, Nimai, he manifests a very unusual passage. It says, Ekadina Vayu Deha Manja Kori Chal. That one day, on the pretext of some sickness, Ekadin, one day, Vayu Deha Manja Kori Chal, a sickness due to a disturbance of the air, Vayu Deha. Somebody translated excessive gas, which I guess is one way to put it, but it sounds a little smelly. I don't appreciate it as a translation, and it's really not what's being said. Vayu Deha means the air in the body. There's some disturbance of the air, and it's considered that in Ayurvedic medicine, especially when there's some madness, that's due to some disturbance of the airs. But actually, Prakashena Prema Bhakti Vikara Shakal. Mahaprabhu was manifesting symptoms of ecstatic prema, ecstatic love. And the devotees, they couldn't understand that. And he was rolling on the ground and crying. He'd become a mad person. He was roaring very loudly and challenging everyone like a wrestler. And sometimes he'd start beating whoever he could catch. And then suddenly his body would become stunned, and he would fall unconscious in a way that everybody became frightened. And so, Shunilena Bandhugana Vayu Vikar, some of Mahaprabhu's friends of Bandhugana, Shunilena, they'd heard about this Vayu Vikar, this transformation of his airs, which again this translator calls it a gastric disorder, which I really don't like that phrase, gastric disorder. That's really terrible. Anyway, so they came running to treat Mahaprabhu. And it was Buddhimanta Khan and Mukunda, Sanjaya, and different associates of the Lord. They were very high-class persons. They were very wealthy. And they applied some medicinal oils, Vishnu Taila, Narayan Taila. That Narayan Taila, that Narayan oil, sometimes we get that. It's a very, very nice oil. And they used it, they put it on the Lord's head. But that didn't change the Lord's situation. And still, it said, Sarva Ange Kampa Prabhu Kori Ashvalana. His body was still shivering, and he was shouting loudly. And then suddenly, Nimai, he started calling out. Prabhu Bole Mui Sarva Lokera Ishvara Mui Vishvadharon Mora Nama Vishvambara Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Mahaprabhu said, Mui Sarva Lokera Ishvar. I am the controller of everything. Mui Vishvadharon. I maintain the universe. Moranama, that's why I'm named Vishvambar. That's why I have this name. So sometimes he manifested that mood. Because Gaura Lila is Krishna Lila. There's no difference between the two. He said, Mui se moratana chine kona jane. I am the Supreme Lord. I'm He. Mui se. But na chine kona jane. Nobody recognizes me. And then Mahaprabhu started swaying around and falling over. And the devotees were trying to catch him. And so, in this way, Mahaprabhu was manifesting ecstatic symptoms on the plea of some disturbance of the airs. And some people were saying, Keho Boli, Hoila Dhanava Adishtan. A demon has taken possession of his body. Just like today, people like those movies. And when I was a young boy, we went to see a movie called The Exorcist. So sometimes people, they like to read or hear about some person who's been possessed by a ghost. So also there was talk like that, even in Navadvip at the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And someone else said, Hena Bhuji Dakinira Kam. What does Dakinira mean? It means a witch. This is a work of a witch. And then someone else said, no. Vakyavyai, this is some disturbance of the airs. He's not a demon, he's not a witch. And so everybody's giving different opinions. But because of Vishnu Maya Mohi Tattva Na Janiyatana, they couldn't understand the truth. And so they began rubbing medicated oils on Mahaprabhu's Nimai's head, and they put him in a wooden tub filled with oil, and they rubbed his body. Ayurvedic medicine. A very nice thing. And Mahaprabhu was laying there in that oil, and he started laughing. Just as it said, Taila Droni Bhashi Prabhu Hashi Kala Kala. He laughed and laughed and laughed. Satyajena Mahavayu Karayachi Bala. Just like he actually did have some disturbance in the airs. But he's laughing and laughing because they don't understand. And he's being able to enjoy, finally he's being able to enjoy what it means to be a devotee. He wanted to understand this thing so very, very badly. So all the devotees were seeing this, and they were very, very happy. They began chanting the holy names of the Lord. They started giving gifts and cloth to each other. And they were saying, well, he's recovered, and people were very, very happy to hear that. And so in this way, Mahaprabhu was performing his pastimes, and the devotees were telling him, Shabi Bholi, Bhaja Bhapa Krishna Charana. Please worship the lotus feet of Krishna. Kshaneke Nahika Bhapa Anitya Sarir. This body is a very temporary thing. You should understand this thing, that this body may be gone any moment. You're a sober person. Tomare ki shaitaimu, tumi Mahadir. You're Mahadir, you're very sober, so how can we teach you? And Mahaprabhu, again, he smiled at the Vaishnavas and offered obeisances to them. And then he would go and spend time with the students. So Nimai, he was the life of all those students. And Vrindavan Das Thakur, he says that all the students would sit around him when he would go to take bath in the Ganga. And Mahaprabhu would, some of the devotees would bring him some prasadam and things, and he would take that and then lay down, and then Lakshmi Devi, his wife, would come and massage him. And these pastimes are just like the pastimes in Vrindavan and Dwarka, because Gaura Lila is Krishna Lila. And Vrindavan Das Thakur says that the same Mahaprabhu, Nagare Brahmana Kori Sri Sachinandana, that although he's Devera Durlabha Vasudeki Sarvajan, Although the demigods rarely see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, now Nagare Brahmanakori Sri Satchidananda, he's wandering about throughout the town. Such a wonderful thing. Jagannath does the same thing. Here in Puri, in his form as Madan Mohan, he wanders throughout the town. He goes for Chandan Yatra. As Jagannath, he goes for Rath Yatra. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also here in Puri is described that he was wandering all throughout Puri and chanting japa. Anyway, Vrindavan Das Thakur in this chapter, then he begins to give a description of different pastimes that Mahaprabhu performed in Navadvip, and his purpose in describing his pastimes is to show that this Lord of Navadvip previously is the same Lord of Vrindavan. He said, Uttalena Prabhu Tantu Vayera Dhurai Dekiya Sambhrami Tantu Vaya Namaskari. That one day Mahaprabhu, he went to the house of a weaver, and the weaver respectfully offered him obeisances. And the Lord told him, hey, Balavastra Ana, you give me some nice piece of cloth. And the weaver immediately brought that cloth, and the Lord asked him then, hey, Vashra ki mulya loy? And mulya means the price. How much does this cost? And that weaver said, Tumi apane jediba. Whatever you want to give, you decide. And they argued over the price for some time. And then Mahaprabhu said, but Avi Karinai, right now I don't have any money. He took all of his time and they argued about the price. And then the weaver said, that's okay. You did Dasi Pakshi Dio Jegosai, in 10 or 15 days you can pay me, that's okay. You just take the cloth and you wear it. And you can pay me whenever you like. And Mahaprabhu at that time, he said that Subha Drishti Koti, he gave his merciful glance on that weaver. And just as Vrindavan Das Thakur describes, as Krishna was going through the streets of Mathura and blessing all the residents of Mathura there, and the cloth wall of that personality who was washing the cloth of Kamsa, Krishna gave him some blessings. So then Mahaprabhu gave him some blessing, and he went on to the house. Uttalina Giya Prabhu Goyalara Puri. He went to the house of a cowherd boy. And he sat down on the veranda of that house, and Mahaprabhu started making fun of the Brahmins. Now that's an interesting thing, because this Lord of Navadvip, he's also the Lord of Gokul, of Vrindavan. And that same Lord of Vrindavan who used to make fun of Madhu Mangal, and who used to make fun of the boys, used to make fun of the husbands of the lady Brahmins in Mathura, he began to make fun of the Brahmins. And then Mahaprabhu, he told one of the Gwalas, one of the cowherd boys, you bring me some milk and yogurt. Today I'm going to accept some charity from you. And so the cowherd men, they love Krishna, they love Mahaprabhu so much, Nimai. He's so beautiful, so they gave him a nice seat, and they began to joke with him and address him in a very familiar, sweet way. They said, you're like our uncle, look, we're going to get some rice, which is not appropriate for a Gwala, for a cowherd person to offer a Brahmin. Nimai comes from a Brahmin family, to offer them some rice especially. Sometimes they may offer some puri or something cooked in ghee, but they generally don't offer rice. But Vrindavan Das Thakur is mentioning this because it indicates the sweetness. And they're saying, hey, don't you remember Jata Bhatta, Karera Amara, how you previously came and you ate in my house? And they didn't realize it. Vrindavan Das Thakur says, but Saraswati Sacha Kahi Gopa Nahi Jani. That by the mercy of Saraswati Devi, what they were saying was true. And Mahaprabhu, who's Krishna, he just smiled, understanding it. And then very happily they all gave him their milk and ghee and yogurt and sour cream and butter and things. And then after that, Mahaprabhu was very satisfied with them. Then he went to the house of someone who was selling oils, fragrances, Gandhavani. Gandhavani means a perfume merchant. And that perfume merchant, he offered his obeisances to Nimai. And without even being asked, he immediately said, here, you please take some of my best perfume. And Nimai asked him, what is the price? And that merchant, he replied, he said that Tumi Jana Mahashoy, my dear sir, Tomashtani Muyaki Nita Yukta Hoy. Is it appropriate for me to take money from you? And this is a mood of brunch. He said, the day you can take this oil and you go home, and after taking bath, if the fragrance still remains and you like it, then you can pay me whatever you like, because that's really good quality oil. The fragrance is still there even after you've taken your bath. And then that merchant, he put the oil, that fragrant oil, on the body of Chaitanya, of Nimai. And then he went on and he gave his mercy to that person. Then he went on to the florist. And that florist, as soon as he saw Nimai, he offered obeisances to him and a place to sit. And Nimai told him, my dear florist, he said, I would like to have a nice garland, but I don't have any money with me. What can I do? And that florist, he said, no problem. Kicha doya nahika tomo. You don't have to pay anything. It's okay. And that florist, and he gave a garland to Mahaprabhu, just like in Sudama in Mathura, when Krishna was walking through the streets of Mathura. Sudama also came, that florist, and he offered to Krishna and Balaram the flowers which are meant to be offered to Kamsa. And then Mahaprabhu went to a betel nut merchant, and he also gave so many things to him, and Mahaprabhu Nimai gave him his blessings. And this way he was going from one house to another house and blessing all the residents of Navadvip. In the same way that Krishna blessed all the residents of Mathura and Vrindavan by walking through the streets and stealing milk products from the gopis and taking things from the different devotees and things. And Vrindavan Das Thakur says that Madhupuri Praya Jaina Navadvipapuri, that Navadvip Dham was just like Madhupuri, just like Mathura. And Eko Jati Laksha Kaitina Pari, millions of people belonging to different castes, they all belonged there. And they were all offering things in so many ways to Nimai. And he says, Purve Jaina Madhupuri Korila Brahmana She Lila Kori Ebi Sachiranandan. That previously, Purve Jaina Madhupuri Korila Brahman, Krishna was wandering through the streets of Mathura. And that same Krishna now, Ebe, Se Lila Kori Ebi Sachiranandan, now he's become the son of Mother Sachi. And he's walking the streets of Navadvip. And sometimes it's described by Vrindavan Das Thakur that Nimai, he would see the full moon. One night he saw the Purnima. And at that time he began to play a flute. Apurva Muralidvani, Lagi La Korati, Ai Bhai Ar Keha Na Paya Shunite. He began to play that flute in such a beautiful way. And at that time, Sachi Mata, she heard the sound of that flute. She's the most fortunate person in all the three worlds. When Krishna comes in the mood of Radharani, and as a mood of a devotee, but still he plays the flute sometimes. When she heard that sound of the flute, she fell down to the ground unconscious. And then after some time, she regained external consciousness. And she kept listening to the sound of that amazing flute. And then she noticed that sound is coming from the direction where her Nimai was. And so she went there and she saw that Nimai was sitting at the edge of the door of the Vishnu temple there. And Sachi Mata saw the full moon on the chest of her son. And she went back inside and she was very confused. Sachi Mata had a hard time. Mothers always have a hard time with children. She went back inside and she was trying to understand what she saw. And then one night, Konadina Nishabhage, in the middle of the night, Sachi Ai Sune, Sachi Devi, she heard something. Gita Vajya Yanta Vaya Katta Shatta Jani. She heard hundreds and hundreds of people singing and playing musical instruments. Jaina Maharasha Krita Shunina Pishal. She saw the Ras Lila going on. And another day, Kona Dina Deki Sarva Bhari Gada Dvara Jyotirmaya Vayakichuna Dekina Ar. Another occasion, Sachimata, she saw this brilliant effulgence all around her house. And another day, she saw so many Lakshmi Devis coming with lotus flowers in their hands and coming to worship her Nimai. And on other occasions, she would see the demigods. And this way, Sachimata was becoming confused more and more every day in such a transcendental way. And it brings pleasure to Nimai. Hina Mate Shigora Sundar Bhanamali. Vrindavan Das Thakur says, in this way, Lord Gaura Sundar, who's non-different from Krishna, he stayed incognito. Ache Guru Rupi. Guru means hidden. Guru Rupi in a hidden form. Nijanandi Kutahali. By staying there in Navadweep, and Nijananda Kutahali, he was relishing his own ecstasy in a hidden form. But still the devotees, they couldn't recognize him. They couldn't understand who Nimai was, even though some of these things are going on. And sometimes Nimai is described with walking down the road, and he's dressed like a king, like with yellow cloth, like Krishna, and the people were seeing him, and they were just astonished. Just looking at him, all their sins would go away, and their hearts had become so very, very attracted. And one day, Srivas Pandit was coming the opposite direction, and when he saw Nimai, Srivas began to laugh very loudly. And Taini Deki Prabhu Korilena Namaskar. Nimai offered obeisances to Srivas. Srivas was an old man. Nimai sometimes, and Nityananda Prabhu, would breastfeed from the breast of Malini, the wife of Srivas. He was an old man. And at that time, Srivas Thakur, Chirajiva Hao, Boli Srivas Udar. He would give a blessing to Nimai. May you live forever. So that same Srivas Thakur is Narad Muni in Krishna Lila. Krishna's great devotee, who was a very important devotee. And now he's become a very important Brahmin in Gaura Lila. And Srivas would address him, and he would say, my dear, he addressed him as Uda Terak Chudamani, O best of the arrogant. Uda Terak Chudamani, O crest jewel of all the arrogant persons. Where are you going? Why are you wasting your time by not worshiping Krishna? Krishna na bhajiya, kalaki karye ganao. Why are you spending day and night? You're just teaching mundane knowledge. Why are people studying? Education is to understand that we should worship Krishna. You should worship Krishna. And Mahaprabhu, he laughed and smiled. Hasi Boli Mahaprabhu. Shunaha Pandit. He said, hey, you listen, Pandit. Tomara Kripayat Seha Hoibe Nishchita. By your mercy, I'll certainly have this thing. And Mahaprabhu in this way is teaching us. And so Mahaprabhu then he would go to the Ganga with all of his students, and he would sit on the bank of the Ganga with those students sitting all around him. And Vrindavan Das Thakur says that just as Krishna, he says, Kalindira Tire, Jaina Srinanda Kumar, just as the son of Nanda Maharaj would sit on the bank of the Jamuna, Gopa Brinda Madhya Basi Koyali Bihar, he would sit amongst the cowherd boys on the bank of the Jamuna. So in the same way, say Gopa Brinda Lai, say Krishna Chandra, Bhuji Dvija Rupi Ganga Tire Kori Ranga. That same Krishna now has come as a Brahmin in Kali Yuga, and he's sitting with the same boys, but now they're sitting on the bank of the Ganga. So in this way, our Guru Maharaj says so many different ways how Gaura Lila is Krishna Lila. And we should understand this principle. This is a very, very important point for us to understand. To try to go deep and understand the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the mood of Krishna, the mood of Srimati Radharani. What is the mood of Radharani that Krishna wanted to taste? My Guru Maharaj used to say that unless you understand Radha, you can't understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And why is it that Krishna wants to taste that mood of Radha? What is lacking in Krishna that he has to run after the feelings of this woman Shrimati Radharani? What is the necessity of that? So all of these are very, very important things. I'm going to go ahead and stop there. We didn't make so much progress in the book, but I hope all of you got something out of this today. If there's any reflections or comments from anybody, this would be a good time for them. Hare Krishna. Mukunda, do you want to share anything? Did you win any prize today? Seeing a heavy coat on you, boy, it looks really intimidating. South Africa.
It's cold here, probably. I'm sitting in a cold room. Actually, probably nothing really to contribute to the.
It's too hot.
Probably nothing really to contribute to it. Just really relishing the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. I mean, it's always so nice, and I always relish the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. So I'm very thankful for that.
Very nice.
Yes, bro.
I was just going to say that we hear for different purposes. Sometimes we hear so we can have some understanding of something. But other times we understand some tattva. But other times we just want to hear and understand the feelings and the moods. And this is a little more of a session like that today.
Yeah, it's very nice, Prabhu. I really, really, really appreciated today's class as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. You had something else you wanted to say? Sure.
I wanted to speak a little on, you mentioned earlier on the difference between Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. They're both the same. Gaura lila is Krishna lila, and Krishna lila is Gaura lila. And I was focusing on what your Guru Maharaj mentioned previously about this river with two embankments. One embankment is for union, the other embankment is for separation. And he said that they never meet. But then he clarified that by saying that Rupa Goswami mentions that in very, very rare and special circumstances, these two banks come together as one. And when they come together as one, they become Lord Chaitanya. Prema Vachitya. I think that's the word the Guru Maharaj used, Prema Vachitya. So I'm just thinking, even the word rare cannot describe this type of transcendental rarity, because we are so fortunate to be a part of this rarity, actually. Because not many people actually know of this. Not many people know of Lord Chaitanya. And here we are trying to go not just on the external platform, we're trying to go even deeper. So how much more rare, transcendentally rare this must be. I mean, there must be so much more depth to all of this. It's just a feeling I have inside of me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's a very important point. We should realize how fortunate we are. It's an interesting thing. We've been speaking recently about a verse in the end of the Gita. Krishna finishes speaking the entire Bhagavad Gita, understanding this is going to be a bestseller. This is going to be the #1 book throughout history and things. And then he finishes telling Arjuna everything, and he tells him, Idam te nadapaskaya na bhakte kadachana chashashishabe bachana chamam yo visuyati. He said, don't speak this book. Don't share this book with somebody who's not austere, not a paskaya, who's not a devotee, who's not doing service, someone who's envious. Don't share that with them. And so we should understand that's Bhagavad Gita, and what to speak of Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's a very confidential subject matter. And people have to pay a proper price for it. Even Bhagavad Gita. They have to, if they have no austerity, then how can they understand something of the Gita? If they're not a devotee, if they're not inclined to do service, if they're envious, how can they understand the Gita? So in a similar way, we want to understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but most of us, we're so absorbed in our own sense gratification, our own pleasures, that it doesn't even cross our mind that the Lord may have his own particular feelings and things. It's such an amazing thing, as you said. Prema Vaicitya, when the lover and the beloved.
Really amazing, yeah.
And it's also Madhanakya Mahabhav. Madhanakya Mahabhav is when the topmost feelings of separation is there, that Sudura Prabhas, but it's also Sumriti Man Sambhog. Sumriti Man Sambhog means the topmost union. So it's the topmost union because they're combined together. But it's the topmost separation because they're feeling like Krishna's gone and Krishna's not here. And they become together in one. And that's divine madness. That's Radharani in the Brahma Gita. And that's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. It's a very, very wonderful thing to understand. Thank you very much for your reflections, Prabhu. I really appreciate it.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji, for that explanation also. And it's just, it makes us wonder how far we are from all of this. How many, I'm just thinking, how many more lifetimes do we have to go through to come to this particular point of actually understanding this, not on just a physical platform or mental platform, but really understanding it from within the heart.
So we're
How many
hearing
more
about,
lifetimes do we need?
we're hearing about this. It's nice. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in one Sajjana Toshniya magazine, he composed a shloka, a Bengali Paya verse. Let me see if I can remember. He says, Padile Shunile Kabu Krishna Prapti Noi. So just by hearing class, Padile Shunile, just by hearing, you can't get Krishna. Bhajile Vishuddha Bhavi Krishna Prapti Noi. But when we do bhajan, that's how we get Krishna. So this is the point that the devotees are making to Nimai. It's okay. You're studying Shastra, you're studying Gita, you're studying Bhagavatam, so many, that's all right. But you're not doing bhajan. So we want to speak these things for a purpose. On one level, we may have some intellectual curiosity, and we may feel some great fortune to be able to hear something and understand something about it. But the real purpose that our acharyas are speaking these things for is to give us some inspiration in our nam-bhajan. Because when we do that nam-bhajan and we please Gurudev and the Vaishnavas, Tate Krishna Bhaji Kori Guru to Sevan, then we'll be able to get Krishna Bhakti. Okay?
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, on that point, if I can jump in on this one, Prabhu, on that point you're saying on Nam Bhajan, that's supposed to be where we really diving into Bhakti, not just necessarily hearing the classes for something interesting. So how is that Nam Bhajan meant to be done, if that's the case?
What's meant to be done, as Srila Prabhupada told us. It's meant to be done without niraparadi nam loyi pai prema dana. It's meant to be done without any of the 10 offenses. Tate Krishna Bhaji Kore Guru Sevan, as Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's instructed us. It's meant to be done as a service to Gurudev. And therefore we have the first initiation, which seems very mysterious perhaps. We sometimes speak on this, the mystery of first initiation. How is it that someone's getting initiated into a mantra they've already been chanting? But that's what goes on in ISKCON. Already chanting the Hare Krishna mantra for 6 months or a year before they get initiated. And then they get initiated. But we don't see the Guru speaking the mantra in their ear either. And what is that? Traditionally the Guru speaks a mantra in the ear. So what's going on? In Rupa Goswami's Laghu Bhagavatamrita, he describes it, Sri Chaitanya Makod Girna Hare Krishna iti Varnakaha Majayanti Jagat Premi Vijayanti Tadavaya, that Mahaprabhu already gave the Maha Mantra to everyone. So it's not necessary for us to give it. Okay, so we can understand everybody can chant the Hare Krishna mantra, it's already been given. But then what is the meaning of the first initiation ceremony then? If you just say that it's just some cheap thing that the Prabhupada's doing to encourage people, we won't feel happy. What's going on is that the Guru is accepting the disciple, and the disciples agreeing to chant as a service to Guru. Tate Krishna Bhaji Kore Guru Sevan. So this is our process of Nam-bhajan. But in the beginning, we're doing Nam-bhajan perhaps for some other motivation. We're doing it so we'll become famous as a kirtan leader. Where maybe we're doing it so we purify our heart. Maybe we're doing it so we'll get liberation or whatever. So we'll become free from material desires and be a good brahmachari. We're doing it for so many different reasons. But when we do it, it's for service for Gurudev. It's the same thing, but the motivation is a little different. When we do this service for Gurudev, then we get that blessing. that kata ruchi, shamahat sevaya vipapuna tirtana sevana. By rendering service to him, we get that kata ruchi. And that kata ruchi indicates also transcendental intelligence. And transcendental intelligence is not the same as just some memorization of verses or something, but transcendental intelligence means that now I realize what I should do. And we have some inspiration for that. And then we begin our bhajan, really. And my Guru Maharaj used to say that bhajan begins with Atma Krandana, or the crying of the soul. So that comes, according to Jagadananda Pandit, after we've come in contact with the devotee of the Lord and associated with him, and we've gotten their mercy. Is that helpful?
So helpful, Prabhu. That's wonderful. Nicely also like brought up a bit into the layers that's there. And I think the foundations are so important. Without offenses, all those kind of elements to access the mercy, and then obviously the mindset so critical as a service to Gurus. Thank you very much for the Prabhu.
I think it's such an important thing, both as speakers, because all of us here, I think sometimes we speak on Bhagavatam or something, as speakers and as listeners, that we understand our purpose. And this verse from Bhaktivinoda Thakur is very beautiful. Padile Shunili Kabu Krishna Prapti Noy. Just by giving class, just by hearing class, doesn't mean you're going to get Krishna. That's not our purpose, but our purpose should always be that we want Krishna Prem, we want Krishna Bhakti, we want to do bhajan. And we're speaking about these things so we can have that inspiration.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Lalita, do you want to share anything? Are you there? Okay. How about Viren Prabhu? Do you have anything you want to share today? Did you win a prize?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So I can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. And now we can see you too. We're very fortunate.
Oh, no prizes, Prabhu. Sorry, I was a bit late. I went to the temple for a program. Prabhu, I don't know, and I'm hoping it's something maybe you can touch in one of your future classes or something. And it's just something that's been playing on my mind for a few days now. So I was just thinking, I was reflecting the one day on this pastime of Lord Damodar's pastime that morning when Mother Yashoda bound Lord Krishna. I remember I was listening to a lecture once at Chaupati where Raghunath Maharaj was explaining that, when Mother Yashoda set Krishna on her lap, she started feeding him the milk from her breast. Then, the milk that overboiled, that milk, like some of the Acharyas comment, that milk, when they saw that, now Krishna was being fed Mother Yashoda's milk, they felt our life is worthless. So, and so kind of like overboiled, it was almost like it was committing suicide in that sense by jumping in the fire. If I remember correctly, Maharaj mentioned something like that. And I was just wondering, when Krishna left Vrindavan, whatever became of his flute?
According to Lochan Das Thakur and Chaitanya Mangal, that flute came as Mahaprabhu's danda, his prized possession. And other devotees say that Vamsi manifested as Vamsi Das Thakur, Vamsi Vedananda Thakur. And there's a book, Murari Vilas, which speaks about that. Two different descriptions are given about the flute of Krishna coming.
But I'm sorry, Prabhu, I'm going to go back just to the Vrindavan Lila as well. So, just as everything was conscious, is there any writings around like what the mood of the flute was when Krishna left? Krishna left and the flute was conscious. If I can put it that way.
I'm not aware of any of that, but there is description. That would be a beautiful song. But there is description given about the bamboo and how the bamboos are praying because we have one of our relatives became the flute. We're so very, very fortunate. They have that consciousness. That would be very beautiful. Maybe in some pada, some song or something that's there somewhere. I haven't come across that. That's a beautiful question. Thank you. But I don't know. If I come across it, maybe we'll share it in the future.
Okay. Thanks, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. And let's see here. Mukunda Prabhu, do you want to share anything? I'm sorry, Krishna Balaram Prabhu. Are you there?
I'm here, Prabhu.
Hare
Just want to say
Krishna.
thank you. Hare Krishna, sorry. Thank you very much. Nice class. Nothing to share. Very inspiring. Nice to see you again in hot India, it seems.
Nice to see you. Hare Krishna. You have to come sometime to Jagannath Puri. That's always our hope. And I think one of the purposes, at least for me, of these kathas and things, it increases our hankering. And some people say that, oh, we can associate with each other through Zoom and through Facebook and WhatsApp and things. In some sense, certainly we can. We can associate with devotees just by hearing about them and hearing what they're doing and by doing kirtan also. But at the same time, as I sometimes comment, if you were to tell the gopis of Vrindavan that don't worry, Krishna left Vrindavan, but he's on Facebook and you can associate with him on Facebook, I don't think the gopis will be satisfied associating with Krishna on Facebook, and we shouldn't be satisfied. Gurudev can say, oh, well, I'll just give classes online and I can download all of my Gurudev's classes, but it's not the same. It's not the same, is it, Krishna Balaram? When you're there with him and he looks at you and he has that look of affection, maybe some tears come to his eyes, and you just feel it's the perfection of your life to have gotten such a glance from your Gurudev and be present with him. That's such an important thing, and that doesn't happen through a recording or something. So when we have these kind of sessions, I always think personally that I'm building a future. And I always want to invite devotees to come and walk with us in the back streets of Jagannath Puri and come to our ashram and take prasadam and that here. So that includes you, as long as you're nice and Nandarani. And we'll have to check with her first.
I think she's going to take advantage of what you just said.
Okay, maybe we should go to her now, okay? Hey, Nandarani, do you have any reflections, anything you want to share? Is he being nice, Krishna Balaram Prabhu?
He's being very nice, Prabhu, and especially because I don't think I can call it hankering, but I really feel like I need to come to India. So that's what he meant by me capitalizing on what you just said. There are a few obstacles, but perhaps if you pray for us, Prabhu, then we will find our way. I've never been to Jagannath Puri, and it's like I cannot believe I have not been to Jagannath Puri for some reason.
Maybe you guys should come for one of our retreats sometime or something, stay for a week or something, or stay for a week or two with us. Just for us. Another problem people have when they come to India, they want to go, they spend 3 days in Vrindavan, 1 day in Delhi, then 4 days in Mayapur, and 2 days in Jagannath Puri, and the only thing they get is loose motions. Because they're always in motion. Better you stay in one place for some time and do some bhajan and like that. But it's not an easy thing when you're a grihastha. I have a friend in America. He has 6 children. Last I heard, maybe he's got 7 or 8 now. And sometimes he brings the whole gang to India. Now, at least 4 of those kids, I think maybe 4 or 5 of them are adults. They're over 12 years old. So he has to pay full, that's like the price of a down payment on a house. Just for round trip tickets to India and back. It's a really, really intense thing for householders. It's something at least you have to keep in your heart. And remember, if you can't financially do for sometimes, you just keep it there. And Krishna Balaram Prabhu is a good husband. You have to facilitate your wife's desire to bring her to India. Right, Nandarani?
Yes, thank you, Prabhu, for that. I hope that it inspires him a little more, but I think he is inspired. But yeah, we have to, like you said, there's practical realities we also have to consider. But I got a lot of prizes. Oh.
Yeah, I just disappeared. Let me just do something.
Yes.
Keep speaking.
Are you still with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can still hear you. We just only see your cat.
Okay. Just, you can go ahead and speak. I can hear you. I'm just
Okay.
with my iPad here.
Okay. Well, Prabhu, I got a lot of prizes from the class. I enjoyed it very much listening to the pastimes, especially how there are those parallels between Krishna Lila and Chaitanya Lila, the Gaura Lila. That was lovely. When you said that Mother Sachi had a hard time, and mothers have a hard time, I sort of smiled at that because I think even though we are a very, very perverted reflection of the reality of what that really is like in the spiritual world, I think in general it's true. Mothers have a hard time.
Yeah.
But when you finally said that point about how she had the flute and she had Radha and Krishna, I mean, she had Lord Chaitanya, so it's Radha and Krishna in one sort of package, as you put it. It just dawned on me that, oh my gosh, she possibly had a more difficult time than Mother Yashoda. Because when Mother Yashoda was binding Krishna, then she was chastising Krishna. But Mother Sachi had to sort of make sure that Nimai grew up properly. I'm assuming that that's what her intention was, wanted him. And people were thinking he was doing all these rascal type of things. So my mind just went there, Prabhu, for some reason. But what an interesting scenario she was placed in, or she had to deal with. And what an amazing personality this Mother Sachi must be. It also made me think about that amazing pastime, because I think it's because of her that one of the reasons is that it's because of her that he went to Jagannath Puri. So that she could somehow remain in some contact or see him. And I was appreciating Mother Sachi from that point, bro. Thank you for that.
Yeah. There's a special kind of, I mean, you're surrounded by men. We have three small men actually in your house, and one has a bigger body, but he's probably got the same kind of mentality as the other two, because I know that's what men are like. And Krishna Bal and Prabhu, you can argue with me if that's not true, but my mother, she had three boys. She survived raising three boys, and boys just have this nature. I remember hearing from my father when I was a young boy, he was telling us about how he used to light off firecrackers in the school, and he was doing all these rascal kind of things, and he just relished that so much, telling us about that. And I think that's a pretty common thing in general for men, especially boys. They just want to be like rascals. They just get some pleasure being bad or something in kind of a sweet way. And Krishna's like that. And Krishna would go and steal butter from the gopis. Krishna would go and if there was no butter to steal, and he would go and pinch the sleeping babies. He'd pass urine in the corners of the house, or sometimes stool. And he would just do so many bad things. And Nimai would do the same kind of things also. Those things are there. So yeah, it is a perverted reflection. And we don't want to be like Sahajas and take things in a cheap way. But at the same time, it's a perverted reflection. And we can understand something of it. You can appreciate something of Sachi Mata, what she's going through, because you have two boys, and what rascals they must be. You have three boys, and what rascals all three of them are, and how difficult that is. You can understand something what it's like for her, and how sometimes she finds Nimai crawling on the pots, the dirty burned pots, and and doing so many things, or going to the girls and pulling on the girls' clothes and stealing the girls' clothes and telling them, you should marry me, I love you, I want you to marry me. And really, that's real rascaldom for a small boy to go and do that with the girls. And Nimai was doing that on a regular basis. So many bad things. Brahmins were chanting their Gayatri mantra in the water, and he would come under the water and grab their legs and pull them under the water while they were chanting their Gayatri mantra. Or he would start splashing them in the face and saying, why are you worshiping Krishna? You should worship me. That's a big time rascal nonsense thing to do. But he was doing that. And I think it's important too for devotees who are raising children, especially mothers, both parents, to appreciate that quality. Prabhupada sometimes spoke like that. He said that young boys are rascals. And it's a symptom of intelligence when they're rascals. So your husband's a great, very intelligent personality, no doubt. it's a symptom of intelligence that they're rascals. And we remember the pastimes of Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in that way, and we can understand something about them. And I could just speak about this in a number of different ways. Another way is from Bhakti Sandarbha, where Jiva Goswami comments that Krishna doesn't have mercy. Now, that's a shocking thing to say when we say that, hey, Krishna Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandhu Jagatpate, he's the ocean of mercy. But Jiva Goswami says, nope, he doesn't give mercy. Because only someone who feels compassion can give mercy. And only someone can have compassion who's also suffered the same way that the other person has suffered. And Krishna never suffers. He's an Anandamaya, he's just full of happiness and bliss. He doesn't know what it's like to suffer. But he does suffer in the mood of a devotee. And therefore Krishna Kripa Shrimurti, those devotees are not different from him. And Krishna does give mercy. My Guru Maharaj used to say that if you ask Krishna for mercy, Krishna will say, I'm sorry, I don't have any. You have to go to my devotees. That's where the mercy is at. And that's why Krishna came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because as Mahaprabhu, he's suffering. He's suffering in separation from himself, from Krishna. He's crying and crying. And because he's suffering, then he can give mercy. Otherwise, how is it possible to give mercy? So it's an important quality, something we learn in life.
Okay. The other, that was wonderful, Prabhu. That was really wonderful. The other prize that I felt I got was when you talked about that Lord Chaitanya just listened to the more junior devotees or the devotees in general. And that for me really struck a chord, because Krishna Balaram and I were talking about this, or maybe I was expressing it to him, that, you know, as we go through our Krishna consciousness, there's newer devotees coming up, and they might have a different mood of serving. They might have a different way of doing things, and we've been trained in a certain way. So we considered it like, you know, I wouldn't like to say the word senior, but I think because we've been around a longer time, then devotees think we are a bit more senior or something like that. But to be able to be open to the younger devotees and how they do things, yet to be able to train, or not train, maybe train is not the right word, but to give them association in such a way as to share the teachings that we've had, I think it's a bit of an art, Prabhu. Because when you spoke about that, the phrase that came to my mind is, you know, when somebody says, "Who don't you know who I am?" You know, and Lord Chaitanya didn't do that. There's examples of Srila Prabhupada as well, where he just accepted what a very junior person would say, and I really appreciated that point. Thank you, Prabhu.
This is a very sweet thing, and we can learn from a child. And I spoke to many parents about this thing, that I also raising my son, you learn sometimes more from the child than maybe the child learns from you. There's an example I was thinking of in the life of Ramanujacharya. There's one devotee, Quresh was his name, that's who it was. And Quresh, when he was like a 4-year-old boy, just, you know what a 4-year-old boy is like, just practically a toddler, there was some big pundit came to the village, and the person was so proud, and everybody was very impressed with how much Shastra he knew, and but he was such an arrogant person, and he was showing off his panditry, his knowledge, and this little boy, this little 4-year-old boy, suddenly walked up to him with a handful of sand and said, "Sir, how many grains of sand do I have in my hand?" And that little boy's just real straight, simple question defeated that big pundit, and he realized what a proud fellow he was, and he learned something from that 4-year-old boy. So in the same way, a wise person can also learn from a child. We should always remember that, and that's a good teacher who learns from the students, a good parent who learns from the children, and there's then a kind of beautiful bond of love that develops between the two. And it's one reason also we mentioned in the beginning how, in the beginning of Harinam Chintamani, Bhaktivinoda explains how Mahaprabhu, when he came to Puri, he was hearing from different devotees. And that hearing from them developed, there was a very amazing bond of love between them. And sometimes devotees are asked by their guru to speak. I don't know if that's happened to any of you. That happened to me sometimes. Guru would ask me to speak. Prabhupada sometimes would ask Jamuna to speak, or different devotees. And it's very intimidating, it's very frightening. Oh my God, I have to speak in front of Srila Prabhupada. But because you're just speaking what you've gotten from Prabhupada, it's like offering Ganga water to the Ganga, or offering a lamp to the sun. You're offering it, and then a bond comes between the two of you. Just in the same way a child, you've taught them so many things, and then the child goes and you see them speaking or doing something, and you see them exhibiting the things that you've taught them, and you feel so happy and so proud of that. And a bond comes between the two of you like that. So that's an important thing for us. We shouldn't just be afraid and run away when Gurudev says, asks us to speak. We shouldn't push ourselves forward either, and we should not think ourselves qualified. But that's always going to happen, just like the parents want to hear the child speak. Guru also wants to hear the disciple speak. He wants to know, what have you learned? It's an important thing. And it's a beautiful bond between us.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Anybody else here in the room with any reflections or anything? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and we'll stop there. Thank you, Nandarani. Thank you, all the devotees. Chaitanya Prabhu, do you have anything else you want to share before we finish today?
I did have one other query. I was just curious. You got somebody like Haridas Thakur who's so intimately involved with Lord Chaitanya's pastime, but he's Brahma himself there. It kind of sparked the thought: are there also different, let's say, calibers or different levels of devotees associated with Lord Chaitanya? How is it that sometimes somebody like Lord Brahma, who's considered a mixed devotee, who's also so intimately connected with Lord Chaitanya?
So many different devotees are there, and of course, those devotees, they all have a past. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as you probably know, in Navaridham Mahatmya, he says that Lord Brahma kidnapped the boys and cows, and he realized, well, I really made a big mistake. And Krishna told him, anyway, it's okay, don't worry, you're the temple president of the universe, it's okay. And Lord Brahma said, no, that's not good enough. I want to take birth in a low family. And so he took birth as a Muslim. And it's very interesting to me that he came to Puri. I oftentimes comment on this. Several things about Haridas Thakur really strikes us. One of them is that he's a person who installed the deities in Puri. But now they won't let him inside the temple. And he doesn't complain about that. And Mahaprabhu blesses him. He's so pleased with him for that. That now he's suffering some abuse, which you could say was not due. It's not fair, because he's actually Lord Brahma, and they're not letting him in the temple as Haridas Thakur. But he just accepts that abuse without any complaint, without trying to debate or argue. And Mahaprabhu becomes so pleased with him for that he comes personally every day to see him. Another thing that's very striking to me about Lord Brahma, about Haridas Thakur, is that as Lord Brahma, he became sexually agitated by his own daughter. And that's a really shocking thing to understand. But Haridas Thakur, when the same Brahma came as Haridas Thakur, Maya Devi personified, much more powerful than his own daughter, Maya Devi personified came before him, and he was undisturbed. And so Bhakti Damodar Maharaj raises this question, beautiful comment he makes. He says, what is the difference between Lord Brahma and Haridas Thakur? And Chaitanya, I think you'll appreciate this because you retired from your position. The difference is that Lord Brahma was a manager. And Haridas Thakur wasn't. So when you're a manager, it's very easy for that abhiman to be there, that kind of pride. Everybody should be treating me with respect. And even if we know this thing, even if you're not thinking that you're due respect, and even you're trying to be humble and serve the devotees, after some days and weeks and months and years of devotees being respectful to you and giving you special position and special favors and things, sometimes some part of you starts thinking, yeah, this is what it's supposed to be. And if somebody comes along and they don't offer obeisances so quickly, or they don't give you the special respect, they cut in front of you for prasadam or whatever it is, then you become annoyed. And you want to say something, and that's a great test for us. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught us with that village lady. here in Jagannath Puri, and we hear the story of Srivas Thakur and Maharaj Prataparuja wanting to have darshan of Mahaprabhu. Is that okay?
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Just one last one, just the clarity that King Prataparuja's servant is Harish Chandra.
I think so. I was actually wondering that when I was saying it. It was just kind of spontaneous on my part. Why don't I look that up? That'll be a little exercise for me, and just to confirm that. I've been telling that story recently. It's been on my mind. But I started telling because this Harish Chandra is another personality in the Bhagavatam. Mm-hmm. And so I'll look at it. It won't be hard to find. Thank you very much for that. I was thinking the same thing. Okay, we'll go ahead and stop there. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktavinda ki jai, Gopremanandi Hari Hari Bol, Vansha Kalpa Darubhishcha, Kripa Sindhu Bhyacha, Patitanam, Pavani Bhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha, Kori Vaishnava ki jai.
Prabhu, before you leave, you were talking about next week, where it might be a bit difficult. You'll let us know whether we can continue or not.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a good habit every week to look ahead too. Let me just check our schedule here. Today is, oh my gosh, so that'll be the 17th. Yeah, we're not going to be able to do it on the 17th. And the 19th, 24th, we're arriving we're starting the Baltic Summer Festival in Lithuania. That may be a little challenging too, but that I can't say just yet. I'm going to try to just go to a room somewhere by myself and do something if we can. I'm taking it for granted, please correct me if I'm wrong, that with this group that Sunday's the only day that we can do this on. Is that correct?
No, Prabhu, I think we can explore some other days as well, but I think the important element is just to keep consistent whichever day we do choose. The Sunday programs coming back on stream, and there's a whole lot more other programs happening. It might be a bit more challenging for devotees to make this. You're also getting back into service at the temple and all those kind of things. So that could be a challenge. The challenge in the week might be the length. That means how long we actually have the class for.
Right.
Other devotees, please also comment if you need to.
So Krishna Kun's here with me also. As I recall, we're leaving India on the 19th. And we're arriving on the 20th, and I'm going to be completely wasted. It's possible on the 21st Thursday, or maybe the 22nd, 23rd I better keep open because of things going on, but it may be possible those 2 days, Thursday or Friday, that I could possibly do something. We'll see. Anyway, we can discuss it, but if you could do me this big favor, I got too many things on my plate right now. I'm not a very organized person. If you could remind me about this, I would be very grateful to be reminded of it, because I've got so many things coming up in the next few weeks. It's going to be really crazy. We're going to Mayapur for like 24 hours, 48 hours, and then we're going to Delhi for about 10 hours, and it's a real crazy program for a bit.